Hi there, I am Sumit Bansal, and in this video I have put together a list of 30 Power Query tricks that are going to save you a lot of time. Now if you are just starting with Power Query or you are an advanced user, I'm sure you're going to pick some nice cool tricks in this video. So let's get started. Let's start by seeing how to open the Power Query editor and get your data into the Power Query editor. So here I have this table. Now, if I have to open this table in the Power Query editor, most of the people would go to the data tab and then use this get data option. But what I can also do is right click on any of these cells, then go to this option called get data from table range and click on it. This is going to open the Power Query editor and get my data in the Power Query editor. So I can do all the transformation here and I can close and load this query. If you want to open the Power Query editor without opening this table, you can use the keyboard shortcut Alt F12. So hold the Alt key and press the F12 key, and that is going to open the Power Query editor and you will see all the existing queries here. And the third way, which is the one that I use the most, is by opening a blank query. Now, when I'm working with Power Query, I open the blank query a lot because I'm either working on creating a formula or testing out something. And a fast way to do this is by adding the blank query icon to the quick access toolbar. Now to do that, I'm going to go to the get data option here, then go to from other sources and then come here to blank query. Now, if I click on this, this is going to open the blank query, but you can see there is these steps that I have to follow. So instead, I would right click on this, then click on add to quick access toolbar. When I do that, it is going to add this icon in the quick access toolbar. And now I can simply click on this icon. So it is going to open the Power Query editor, insert a new blank query and put my cursor in the formula bar. You can also use a keyboard shortcut for this because this is now part of the query editor. You can just press the Alt key and you will see a number next to the icon, the blank query icon, and just use that number. Now the number is based on the position. So in my case, because it's the 9th position, it shows me 9. So I can use Alt 9 and it is going to open a Power Query editor with a blank query. Most people don't know this, but just like the quick access toolbar in Excel, there is also a quick access toolbar in Power Query Editor. So if there are a few commands that you use quite often, you can add them to the quick access toolbar and then you can access them with a single click or with a keyboard shortcut. So let's say, for example, I'm in the transform tab and unpivot column is something I use quite often. So I can add this to the quick access toolbar by right clicking on this and then using this option add to quick access toolbar. When I do that, you'll see that this icon appears in the QAT. And now if I have to use it, I can just click it and with the right column selected, it is going to unpivot the data. Now you can also access this using a keyboard shortcut. Again, just like the previous trick, you can press the Alt key and a number is going to appear. This number is based on the position of that icon in this quick access toolbar, and then you can use it. For example, in this case, if I want to unpivot column, I can press the Alt key and then press the 4 key. If you're working with a data set that has a lot of columns, it could be tricky to find the right column and then select it. So here's a nice trick for you. Go to the View tab and here you have this option called Go to Column. When you click on it, it is going to open the Go to Column dialog box. You can also use the keyboard shortcut Control G. So hold the Control key and press the G key and it is going to open the same Go to Column dialog box. Now here it is going to list all the columns. I only have these many columns, but it is going to list all the columns that you have. You can also search for a specific column and you can also sort this list. For example, as of now, this is sorted in the natural order, which is the order in which this is listed in the table. But if you want, you can also sort it alphabetically. Once you have selected the column, you can click OK and that column is going to be selected and it will also be visible on the screen. Now remember that you can only select one column at a time. So let's say I select this one and click OK. You can see this column is selected and it is also visible on the screen. If you want to rename your columns, steps or query names, you can easily do that by right clicking and then using the rename option. So here I have the query and if I right click, I have the rename option here. In case of column, I have the rename option here. And in case of step, I have the rename option here. But a faster way to do this is by using the keyboard shortcut F2. So select the column name that you want to rename and then press F2 and it gets you into the edit mode and you can quickly rename it. Same is the case with query name. Select the query, press F2 and you get into the edit mode. And if you want to rename a step, select the step, press F2 and you get into the edit mode. When you're working with a query and you want to delete all the steps starting from a specific step till the end, you don't have to do that one by one. So here in this query, I have all these steps, and let's say I want to delete all the steps starting from the third step till the end. So instead of doing it one by one, I can right click and then use this option called delete until end. When I click on it, it is going to ask me for the permission to delete all these steps. And when I do that, it is going to delete all the steps till the end. Just be a bit cautious when using this, because once you delete these steps, you cannot get it back. Another option that you can use is, in this case, I have the query, and let's say I want to extract these first two steps as a separate query. So what I can do is come to this third step, right click, and then use this option called extract previous. What this is going to do is it is going to extract these two steps, the first two steps, as a new query, and then reference that newly created query with this query. See what happens when I click on extract previous. It asks me for the name of the new query. Let's call it new. When I click OK, it has inserted this new query. It has these two steps only. And if I go back to this original query from where I extracted these steps, you can see this was the third step. There is one step that has been introduced, which is called source. And this new step now referred to the newly created query. You can use a keyboard shortcut to zoom in and zoom out in the Power Query interface as well as the advanced editor. So to zoom in, you can use Control Shift and then press the plus key. So hold the Control and the Shift key, and then when you press the plus key, it is going to zoom in, and Control Shift and then minus key is going to zoom out. If you want to set the zoom level to the default one, hold the Control key and press 0. You can also do this in the advanced editor. So if I go to the View tab and then open the advanced editor, here as well, I can do the same thing, hold the Control and the Shift key, and then plus key to zoom in, minus key to zoom out, and 0 to reset the zoom level. If you want to reorder the steps in your query, there are two ways to do it. Let's say I want to move this step a little down, then I can select this step, then hold the left mouse button and then drag it down. And you can see this thick green line, and I would leave my button wherever I want this step to be placed. Now, when you do that, the step automatically takes care of the referencing. For example, this step here automatically refers to the previous step, which is duplicated column, but it is still broken because there might be some columns that are not available, or there is something that is broken because this step had a specific calculation which is not valid at this stage. So you'll have to manually go and check whether this step is working or not and whether there is an error or not. If you want to move it up, you can again do the same thing, and you can rearrange these steps, and you can do it for all these steps. Another way to move these steps is to right click on the step that you move, and then there is this option to move before or move after. When you click on move before, it is going to move one step before, and move after is going to move it one step after. But as I said, the easiest way is to just drag and drop. Power Query is built on this formula language called M, where M is for mashup. Now, whenever you do anything in the user interface, there is something that happens in the backend. A formula is created, and that formula does everything. Now, in most cases, you do not need to actually worry about it. But as you get more advanced in using Power Query, you would be required to work with these formula language. So to get access to all of these functions that are there in Power Query, and there are more than 800 plus functions, you can get access to it with a simple keyword, and you do not need internet connection for it. You do not need to Google anything. It's all right built into your Power Query software. So to get access to it, either open a new blank query or any new step. Then in the formula bar here, use the equal to sign, then the hash sign, and then type shared. And make sure that this is in lowercase, because Power Query is a case sensitive language. So it has to be in lowercase. And now when you hit enter or click anywhere, you'll see that it gives you this entire table, and it has all of these functions. Now, these are all the functions that are there in Power Query. If new functions are added, they would automatically appear here. And if you want to know about any function, for example, if I want to know about table.contains, I could click here, I could click here, and it is going to give me this entire syntax and a little bit of example of how to use this formula. So if you are learning these functions and if you want to know what's the right syntax, or if there is a formula that exists or not, then you can use this shared keyword. Now, as of now, these are all records, but you can convert it into a table. So here in the record tools, I have convert tab, and here I have into table. When I click on into table, it is going to give me a list like this. And this could be useful. For example, if I want to know what are all the list functions in Power Query, I can just type list dot, and it is going to give me all the functions that start with list. So these are all the list functions. And if I want to know the syntax, then I can come here, click on this function cell, and it is going to give me some details about it. You can see I have some examples as well. Now, not all functions would be as useful when you're working with Power Query M code, but many of these functions are something that you should learn as you get more advanced in using Power Query M code. Also, you can put it in Excel. So if I click on close and load, I get it as a connection, but let's load this. So I would right click on load to. Let's load this in the worksheet as a table, maybe in a new worksheet. And you can see I have all these function names in. Obviously, this is not useful because this function does nothing. If you are in the Power Query editor, you can go through these functions and the syntax. In Excel, it doesn't show you that, but you still get a list of all the functions. So that could be pretty useful if you're starting to learn Power Query functions. Now let me show you something that irritates so many people who are manually writing their formulas in the formula bar or in the advanced editor. So here I have this data, and let's say that I want to get the names of all these columns as a list. Now I cannot do that using the options I have in the user interface, but there is a function to do this, and the function is called Table.Column names. So to do that, I'm going to come here and click on this FX icon. When I do that, it is going to insert a new step. You can see custom one is added in the applied steps, and here I can use my formula. So I would use this formula Table.Column names. Now, while I'm typing, you can see there is this IntelliSense, and the first option here is exactly the function that I want. Now, if I want to autocomplete this, I would just hit the tab key. But see what happens as soon as I hit the tab key, it gives me the function name, but it also gives me this additional table. Now, if I don't notice this and I just type my formula, I would get an error. Or if I notice this, I would have to come back here and remove this table and then go on writing the formula. And this is so irritating because the more you write these formulas, the more this happens and the more time it takes. So here is the way to get rid of this problem. You type the function, but without the dot. So in this case, I would not type Table.Column names. I would type table column names, and then it shows me this function name. I would hit tab key and it shows me the exact function name without any additional thing. So this is the fastest way to do this, but there is another way to do it. If you want, you can start with the dot. So do not write table, start with the dot and use column names. And while you're doing it, you'll see that it is going to give you all of these function names where after the dot, it has this word column. And here you can choose the one that you want and hit tab. And when you do that, it is going to insert the function name and then you can write your formula. So in this case, if I come here and I type this function here and hit enter, you can see I have the list of all the column names in the source data. Here is another function trick that I find really useful. When you're working with these functions in Power Query M code language, you may sometime want to know what this function is about, what it does, what are the syntax that it takes, what are the arguments it takes, what are the data types of it, maybe some example of how that function works. And you can get everything right within the Power Query editor without the internet connection. So here I have this data. And let's say I want to get the names of all the columns. So I'm going to come here and click on the FX icon. It adds this custom one step. And here I would remove whatever is already there and then use the function name. So in this case, my function name is table column names. And now I would have the function name, but don't put anything after the function name, just hit enter. And when you do that, it is going to give you all the documentation about that function that is there within Power Query. So you can see it tells me the name of the function, which is fine. I already knew this. It tells me what it does. It also tells me the syntax where it takes one argument, which is a table, which should be a table data type. And the result is going to be a list data type. And then it also shows me an example. So this is something which is already built into your Power Query software. You do not need to go to the official Microsoft documentation to go through this function. You get everything here. Now, it also gives you this part here where you can invoke the function, but this is not very useful. Just to show you, I have kept it. So I'll show you how it works, but it's not really very useful. So in this case, because it needs a table, I had to create a separate query that has the table as the output. And now I can select this query here, and then I can invoke the function. And when I invoke the function, it is going to give me the result, which is the list of all the column names as a separate query. So you can see it does work, but I had to create a separate query. And in most cases, I don't end up using this part, but I still find it very useful when I have to go through the data types of the arguments, the data type of what the function would return, and a couple of examples. It's a good practice to use CamelCase to give names to your steps and queries. By default, when Power Query inserts a step, you'll see that there are spaces in between. For example, in this case, there are 4 words split column by delimiter, and there is a space in between each word. Similarly here, in renamed columns, there is a space in between the 2 words. Now, the reason I'm asking you to use CamelCase is because when you manually start writing M code and when you're referring to these steps, using CamelCase is going to be a lot cleaner. For example, here, if I insert a new step, you can see that it refers to the previous step, which is renamed columns. And here it has a pound symbol, then double quotes, and then within that it has renamed columns with a space in between. Now, if you have space characters in between, you have to follow this methodology where you have to have a pound symbol and double quotes. But if I rename this step, for example, if I go back here and I rename this step and I remove the space character, so I have renamed columns, and CamelCases, I capitalize the first alphabet of each word, and now I insert a new step. You can see it is just renamed columns. There is no pound symbol, there are no double quotes, so it is a lot cleaner. So using CamelCase would lead to cleaner code, and it is also going to lead to less errors. Power Query has some built-in features that you can use to quickly check the quality of your data in each column. For example, in this case, I have this data, and if I go to the View tab, I have these 3 options: column quality, column distribution, and column profile. Now, when I check this option, column quality, see what happens. It inserts this strip and it shows me these 3 things: valid, error, and empty. So it tells me these 3 things for each column. And you can see that in this case, everything is valid for the top 1000 rows. There are no errors, there are no empty rows, and that is the case for all of these all of these columns. It is going to give you this data for all of these columns. For example, here it tells me that there are 2 error cells, and here there is 1 error. Now, by default, this is only going to give you this data for the top 1000 rows. So if you want this for the entire data set, you can come here in the status bar, click on column profiling based on top 1000 rows option, and then select this option, column profiling based on entire data set. Now, based on how big your data set is, this might take a few seconds or even a few minutes. In this case, I have a data set of 50,000 rows, but if you're working with, let's say, millions of rows, then this might take a while. Now, this also happens for each step. For example, if I select another step, then this is going to reassess, and give you the data for that specific step. Now I can turn it off, and let's see what column distribution is. So when I check this option, it again inserts a strip, and now it is going to give me the distribution of the values in the column. For example, in this case, you can see it tells me there are 49,999 are distinct and 49,998 are unique, and it gives me this data for all of them. Now this could be useful because I can quickly check whether it matches what I expect or not. For example, in case of category, I expect there to be, I think, 4 or 5 categories, but there are 7, which means that there could be some issues. There could be unnecessary categories, or maybe some categories that are misspelled. So this gives you this data for the entire data set. And again, if you change the step, it is going to recalculate and give you this data again. As I said, it might take a few seconds based on how big your data set is. And the third option that we have is column profile, and it is on the selected column. So if, for example, let's say I select category column and I click on column profile, it is going to give me the profile of this selected column, and it tells me that the count is 50,000 and there are 7 distinct and 4 empty string, and it also tells me the value distribution. So I can manually see that there are some misspelled words, furniture is misspelled, peripherals are misspelled, so I can quickly correct them. So this is again something that quickly tells you the quality of your column. So these are 3 options. By default, these are not enabled, but if you want to quickly check the quality of the data for each column, you can use them. There are 2 functions in Power Query that you can use to quickly get more information about each column in your dataset. So here I have a table, and the 2 functions are Table.Profile and Table.Schema. So in this case, let me insert a new step by clicking on this FX icon. Then I'm going to use the function Table.Profile, and this takes one single argument, which is going to be the table. In this case, I'm going to just use the name of the last step, which is change type. And now when I hit enter, it gives me this table where I have all the column names. So these are all the columns that I have, and information about each column, something like minimum value, maximum value, average. For example, in this case, in discount, it tells me that minimum is 0, maximum is 20, and the average discount is this much. And it gives me information about standard deviation and the total count and the null count. For example, if you have columns where all the values are null, then you would see that this value and this value is going to match. So you can easily delete those columns if you want. So this quickly gives you more information about each column. This is more the statistics information. Now, another function that is useful is, let me delete this one. Let's insert a new step again. The other function that is useful is Table.Schema. That is going to give you information about each column, some things like what is the data type of each column, what is the position of each column. So let's use that formula, and then I'm going to give the table, which is the previous step, which is changed type. And now it gives me this as the result, where these are the column names, and it gives me information such as the position of each column. For example, product is second position, quantity is fourth position. And if you are somehow referring to these columns using the position, this could be useful for you. It gives me the type name and the kind. For example, this is text kind and number kind, and these are the data types. So this could be useful. Now, it also gives you all of this other information that you may not know what it is. So if you want to learn more about it, you can come to the formula bar, just type Table.Schema, hit enter, and it is going to give you all the information about this function. So you can see it gives me the column names and then what these are. For example, is nullable means that whether the column can contain null values or not. So it gives you all the information, so you can read about it here. But these two functions can be useful when you quickly want to check what your data set looks like, what is the statistics about the data, and details about the columns. Power Query has a lot of data cleaning and transformation tools, and the one that I really like is called Fill Down. So here I have this data and I want to fill this column because I have all these null values, and I want to fill this region name north down till it finds the next non-filled value, and then do the same thing for south and all the other regions. And I also have it here in the sales manager column where I have the name and I want to fill it down. Now, if you want to do it just for one single column, select this one, right click, and then we have this option fill, where you can either fill down or fill up. Now in fill down, it is going to fill north down, and if I use fill up, then it is going to fill south up. So in this case, I would just go to fill and then click on fill down. And when I do that, it is going to insert a new step, and you can see it has already inserted this formula table.fillDown, source, and then region is the name of the column. If you want to do it for multiple columns, you can do that as well. Select both the columns or whatever number of columns you have that you want to fill down. Right click, go to fill, and then click on fill down, and it is going to do it for both the columns. And you can see that it has not added two steps, it has just added one step. It's the same formula, it just added these two column names as a list. So you can fill down, and if you want, you can fill up as well. So here I have these three queries, and let's say I want to combine these queries. So I want the data from Q1 sales, then Q2 sales, then Q3 sales. Now I want to append these queries. So there is already a tool called append queries in the Power Query interface. So here in the home tab, you can see within combine, I have this option append queries. And if I click on the drop down, it allows me to append the queries or create a new query that would have the combined result. So let me show you how this works, but I also want to show you another way to do this, that is using the ampersand operator. So let me first show you this one. I'll click on append queries as new. This is going to open the append dialog box, and here, because I have more than two tables, I would select this option, and then Q1 sales is already here, so I would select Q2 and Q3, and I would add it here. So it is going to follow the same order, first data from Q1, then Q2, and then Q3. Now when I click OK, it inserts a new query called append1, and it combines the data. Now let me show you how to do this using ampersand operator. So here I'm going to create a new query. So I'll go to other sources, blank query, and here I would just type the names of the query. So Q1 sales, then ampersand Q2 sales, then ampersand Q3 sales, and that's it. Now when I click outside, you can see that it has combined and it has given me the same result. You can even compare these two queries whether they are the same or not. So let's do that. Let's insert a new query, and let's compare them. So I can just use append1 is equal to query1. And this gives me true, which means that the result I got here in append1 and the result I got in query1 is exactly the same. Now this ampersand operator would also work with lists. So if you have two lists and you want to combine them, you can do that. If you have two tables and you want to combine them, you can do that as well. So here I have two queries, web data and CRM, and I want to combine and merge these queries so that I get everything in one single table. Now in web data, I have customer name, city, and email. And in CRM, I have customer name, customer ID, phone number, and a few more details. Now customer name is something which is common in both of these tables. So I want to use this to merge these queries. Now there is already a way to do this in Power Query. There is a tool called merge queries. So if you go to the home tab and in combine, you have this option merge queries. And here I have two options, merge queries and merge queries as new. So when I choose merge queries as new, it is going to create a new query. So let's try this. Let's click on this one. Now in the merge dialog box, I already have the first query selected. I would select the second query, which is CRM. And then I need to choose the column that should be used to merge them, which is going to be customer name in this case. But when I do that, see what happens at the bottom. It says the selection matches 17 of 25 from the first table. And the reason for this is that although the names are the same, there are some special characters such as a line break or a non-blank space that has come in. And that often happens when you get your data from a web. So in this case, I would have to clean this up. So to do that, I'm going to select this column, right click, go to replace values. And here you can put a value to find and value to replace with. But in this case, because we're talking about special characters, I would go to advanced options and check this option, replace using special characters. And when I do that, this drop down becomes available and you can choose these special characters from here. So for example, in this case, let me choose carriage return and click OK. And it is going to insert a step. Then I can go back again here and I would have to do this again. You cannot do them multiple of these special characters in one go, because if I choose multiple of them, let's say I select tab and I select carriage return, it is going to only find those cells that have both of them together. So I don't want that. I want this to happen sequentially. So I would come here and let's choose line feed, click OK. So that is cleaned up. Then again, go back to replace values. Let's do it the third time, and in this case I would use non-breaking spaces, and with a non-breaking space I would replace it with an actual space character. And now when I click OK, things have been cleaned up. So let's see if we can merge them. So I would go to the home tab and here in merge queries, go to merge queries as a new, and let's select the second query, customer name, and you can see 25 out of 25 names now match because we have cleaned up and got rid of those special characters. So now when I click OK, it combines them. I have this table here, so I can expand it. I already have customer name, city, and email ID, so I can get all the other things that are there. So either you can just expand it and then delete the columns, or you can just select the columns that you want from here, click OK, and it is going to merge both of the queries and you get all the data together. In this case, I have customer name, but I have this here again, so I can get rid of this. And similarly, you can just go through the data and remove things that you do not want. So here I have this query called registration data, and I have the full name, registration date, and the email. Now let's say I want to clean this data, or I want to extract part of this data. Let's say I want to extract the first name or the month name from registration date. Now I know how to do this using the inbuilt tools in Power Query or using formulas, but I want to show you something which is called column from examples, where you show Power Query what you want, and then Power Query is going to figure out the right formula and give you the result in the column. Let me show you how it works. So here I have full name. Let's say I want to get the first name. So I would go to add column and here click on column from examples. Now there are two options here. First is from all columns and then other one is from selection. So if you just want to focus on full name column, you select it and then use from a selection. Otherwise you can use from all columns and it will try and figure out which column you want to extract the data from or clean the data from. So in this case, I would just click on this icon and here I would just enter manually the result that I expect. Because I want the first name only, I just entered the first name and it figured out that it is full name column. And now when I click OK, it is going to insert that column with the results, and at the same time it also adds this formula for me. So you can see it has added this step which is called inserted text before delimiter. It gave me the column and it also gave me this formula. Now the good thing here is that because this formula is there, I can be sure that if the formula is right, then the result is going to be right no matter how big my data set is. This is very important compared to what we have in Excel, which is called flash fill, where flash fill tries to guess the pattern and give you the result, but sometimes the result could be wrong. But with Power Query, because you can see the formula that it is using, if the formula is right, you can be sure that the result is going to be right. Now let's see a couple more examples. So let's select registration date, go to add column. And here, let's say I want to get the month name. So I would just come here, type the month name, click OK, and it will give me all the month names and it will give me the formula. So I can also see this formula. I also like column from examples because it also helps you learn M code, try a couple of things and see what the formula has been created and then learn more about that formula. There is a feature in Power Query called Conditional Column that allows you to use if-then-else statement right in the interface. Now you can obviously do a much more enhanced and complicated version with the M code, but a basic version can also be done using the interface. So here I have this data where I have these invoices, and let's say I want to add a new column that is going to check the amount, and if the amount is more than 1000 it shows me high, if the amount is more than 500 it shows me medium, and if it is less then it shows me low. So I can go to this add column tab, and here I have this option called conditional column, and when I click on it, it is going to open this add conditional column dialog box. Now here I can name the new column. Let me call it category. Then I can choose the column name on which I want to check the amount, and then I can use any of these options. So in this case I would go with is greater than 1000, and then the output here is high. And then I can add another clause, which is if the amount is greater than 500, then it would show me medium, else it is going to show me low. And now when I click OK, it is going to insert this column. The name of the column is category, and then you can see here it shows me low, and here it shows me medium for 890, and for 1250 it shows me high. Now as I said, you cannot do much with this if you want to add, let's say, and statements between two if conditions, or if you want to use or, then you cannot do that from the interface, but a basic if then else statement can be done. One of the most amazing feature in Power Query is the ability to quickly unpivot data. Now, if you've used Power Query, there is a high chance you've already used this feature, but there is something interesting I want to show you here. So here I have this data where I have the sales data with the region and product, and then I have all these months values. Now, let's say I want to unpivot these columns. So I want to unpivot these columns, but I want to keep these two columns, region and product, as is. So I can select all these columns, and then when I right click, I have these three options: unpivot column, unpivot other columns, and unpivot only selected columns. Now in this case, I would go with unpivot columns, but see what happens. I've selected all the month columns. When I click on unpivot columns, it is going to give me the right result. But look at the formula. The formula is table.unpivot other columns, which means that the first two options are actually the same. When you select columns and you say unpivot these columns, it actually is not doing the unpivot on the selected columns. It's actually doing the unpivot on the columns that are not selected, and all the other ones are unpivoted. For example, in this case, I selected all the month columns, but then it says unpivot other columns, and then the columns it mentions is region and product. So when I go back here to the source, when I selected these columns and I unpivoted them, it was as if I selected these two columns and used the option unpivot other columns. It gives me the same result. And in fact, if I do this, if I select these two columns and click on unpivot other columns, it is going to give me the exact same result. The formula is going to be exactly the same in this case. So this is important to know. Also, when you're working with this and you absolutely do not want any other columns to be unpivoted, you select these columns, right click, and then only in that situation you are going to use unpivot only selected columns, because when you do that, it actually hard codes these column names. You can see now in this case, it has used a different function called table.unpivot, and then it hard codes these functions, which means that if I add another column, let's say called July 2026, it is not going to work because these columns have been hard coded. But if I had used table.unpivot other columns like here, it would still work. If I add a July column, it would still work, because in this case, it is only choosing these two columns, region and product. It has only hard coded these two columns, and all the other columns are unpivoted. So this is an interesting thing to know about unpivot. Power Query is good at connecting to multiple different data sources and then combine data from there. So what you can do is point Power Query to a specific folder, and if that folder contains Excel files or text files or CSV files, then you can easily combine them. Let me show you. So here I'm going to go to the data tab and then go to get data from file and then click on from folder. So it's going to open the browse dialog box where I can choose the folder where I have the file. So I have this example folder where I have a couple of files. So I'm going to click on open. Now this is going to open the Power Query editor and show me what the files are there in this folder. So here I have three files: February, January, and March. And then there is some metadata about these files. So let's click on transform data. So now it's going to open Power Query editor where we can actually combine these files. And here you can see I have binary, which is the actual file along with all this data. Now I do not want this rest of the data. So I would come here, right click, and then go to remove other columns. And then I can click on these combine files icon. So when I click on this icon, it is going to ask me whether I want to combine the sheet in the Excel files or I want to combine the table. So in this case, it's asking me that it has analyzed the first file and there is a table with this name and the sheet with this name. So what do I want to combine? In this case, I want to combine all the tables. So I would click on sales data. And now when I click OK, it is going to do its thing in the backend, generate a bit of code and a few files, and then give me the combined data. So you can see here, it has given me the combined data. F here is for February, J is for January, and then we have data for March as well. And it has done a few things. Now, I will not go into a lot more detail of what has happened, but let me quickly tell you what happened. In the backend, it created a parameter that will hold the sample file, but that was the first file. Then it has this sample file here, which is the February file. And then it created a function called transform file. And that function was applied and it gave us the data here. And then this was done on all the files. And then it combined the data and gave us the details here. You can see it has inserted all of these steps automatically. It removed the column. So this is that I did. Then it filtered hidden files. Then it invoked custom function, which is this function transform file here. Then it removed other columns. So we have these tables. These are the tables that are there that holds the data. And then it expanded those tables to give us the final data. So you do not even have to know all this. You just click a few buttons and your data is combined. But here is the amazing thing. If I go back to that folder that has the data, so I have this example folder that has these 3 files. If I get a new file for, let's say, April, I can just drag it into this example folder, go back to Power Query, and if I refresh this Power Query, it would get the data from April as well. You can see I have the data from April as well. So all you have to do is just to refresh this query. This query is already pointing towards the folder. It would do everything in the back and it would combine the data. Now there is a lot you can do with it. You can combine Excel files, CSV files, text files. You can even combine files when the data headers might not be consistent. So I've created a lot of different videos on this topic. I would leave some of those links in the description so you can check them out. So here I have this employee data set where I have their names and their department and their skills, and the skills are all in one single cell and I want to split them. Now you can see that there are multiple delimiters. For example, in this case, there is a comma here, there is a pipe symbol here, there is a semicolon in some cases, for example, here. So now I want to remove these delimiters and I want to split them into separate columns. Now, if I use the inbuilt split by delimiter option, it is only going to work with one delimiter. Let me show you. So here, if I want to split it, I can right click, go to split column, and here I have the by delimiter option. When I choose that, I can specify the delimiter, which in this case, let's choose comma, and make sure this is selected, which is each occurrence of the delimiter. So what it's going to do is whenever it finds a comma, it is going to split and put it in a separate column. See what happens when I click OK. It works for some of the rows, but it didn't work for each row. For example, in this case where comma was the delimiter, it worked, but here where there is semicolon and pipe symbol, it did not work. Now what it has done is it has added a step called split column by delimiter, and it has already created this formula for me. So now what I would do is simply change this formula, modify this formula a little bit. As of now, the function used is splitter.split text by delimiter. I would just change this and make it splitter.split text by any delimiter. And when I do that, this is a valid function in Power Query, and you can specify multiple delimiters. So in this case, there is only one delimiter. I can use a list. So the number of delimiters, it could be any number, but these needs to be in a list and in double quotes. So when I use curly brackets, I'm actually creating a list. And now within this list, I can use these double quotes and then put the delimiters within it. So one would be comma, then the other one would be, let's say, semicolon, then the other one would be pipe symbol. And now these are also these column names that are hard coded. Now, if I do not want them, for example, I do not know if my data updates and tomorrow there would be more skills that are going to be added. So I don't want to hard code these column names. So I would just remove it, and the formula is going to automatically figure out how many columns it needs. Now, when I click anywhere outside, you can see it has worked. The data has been split based on multiple delimiters. So there's a minor change in the formula that you need to do, and you will be able to split your data set based on multiple delimiters. Now, this is not really a trick, but a concept that I want to cover, which would be useful, especially if you are a beginner in Power Query. So here I have this query, and if I right click on this query, you will see two options, a duplicate and a reference. So I want to tell you about these two options. So let's duplicate this query. Let's rename it to duplicate. And let's also reference this query and let's rename it to reference. Now in duplicate and reference, the difference is that duplicate is a completely separate query. So here I have this query sales data. You can see there are 3 steps in this query. If I go to duplicate, it would also have the 3 steps. And if I make any change in the sales data, it would have no impact on the duplicate query. These are 2 completely separate queries with the same steps. Now this could be useful if you are testing out something and you want to see if something works out or not. So you quickly duplicate a query, work with it, and when you have figured out the thing, you can delete it or you can keep it, but it's not related or linked to your main query. On the other hand, reference is actually linked to your main query. So let's say I have the sales data and I want to branch out and I want to create multiple separate queries, maybe apply multiple separate filters. I can create multiple queries that reference the same main query. So in this case, if I come to reference, you'll see that it has just one single step and it references the sales data query. So this is actually referencing that query directly. Duplicate has no impact on the original query. Now, if I make any change in this sales data, for example, I have product here and I rename it to, let's say, item, it would have no impact on duplicate as I mentioned, but it would change the reference query. So anything that you do in the main query, it is going to go downstream to the queries that are referenced with it, but it would have no impact on the duplicate query. When you're working with a lot of queries, you can organize them into folders. So here I have all these queries, and if I right click on this query pane, I would have this option new group. And when I click on it, it is going to show me this dialog box where you can give your folder or the group a name, some description if you want, and then that would be created. So for example, in this case, I want to create 3 different groups, one for raw data, one for staging queries, and one for helper queries. So in this case, I can call this raw data. And you can see it created 2 folders. One is raw data and the other one is other queries, which are all the queries which are not in any folder. Similarly, I can come here, create another one called, let's say, helper queries, and another one called staging queries. And here I can simply select these queries that I want to move into any folder and drag them to that folder. Similarly, for helper, I can come here, select these helper queries, move here. And in staging, I can select these queries and I can move it here. Any new query that you create that is not already in a folder, as I said, is going to go under the other queries. Now, one very important thing to note here is that if you delete a group, it is also going to delete all the queries in it. So be a bit cautious. If you want to delete a group but keep the queries, it's a good idea to select these queries and then move them in other queries. Now, if you are deleting a group, Power Query is going to give you a notification. For example, in this case, if I right click and I go to delete group, you can see it shows me this notification that deleting this group will also delete any query within the group. So what you can do is move these queries here in other queries, and then you can delete this group. If you delete all the groups, the other group, other queries group is also going to get deleted, and you would just see the queries in this pane. When you're working with a lot of queries in the query editor, and let's say these are the queries and I have created them manually, or I have duplicated a query, referenced a query, and I've not loaded them anywhere. Now, the first time I click on this close and load button, all of these queries are going to be loaded as separate sheets on my Excel workbook. And this is something that you probably do not want. So there is a setting we can change. So to do that, I'm going to go to the file option here, then go to options and settings, and then click on query options. This is going to open the query options dialog box, and here within global settings, so these are global settings which is applied for the entire Power Query software on your system, and then there are current workbook settings. In the global settings, you need to go to the data load option, and here within default query load settings, by default, this is the option that is selected, which is use standard load settings, which is to load every query as a separate worksheet. But what you have to do is select this option and make sure both of these are unchecked. By default, load to worksheet is checked. So uncheck this option, click OK. Now, when you click on close and load, it is going to load all of these queries only as connection. So here, if I open these queries, this is how your queries would be loaded. These would be connection only. Now, let's say you want to load one of these queries as actual data in the file. You can right click on these, then click on load to, and here you can click on table and then choose whether you want it in the existing worksheet or a new worksheet. Click OK, and then it is going to load that connection, only that connection, as a query in your Excel file as a table, but rest of them would continue to be correction only. Another thing is, if you have these, let's say by default you've not made the changes in the setting, and all of these queries gets loaded into your Excel workbook, and you want to convert them into connection only, a very easy way is to simply delete the sheet on which that table is there. So when I delete this one, it is going to go back to being a connection only query. Let me show you something very interesting in Power Query. So here I have this column with these numbers, and let's say I want to round these numbers. So let me first create a duplicate column. And now I would right click on this, go to transform, and within round I have three options: round, round up, and round down. Now round up and round down work as expected, but let's look at the round option. So when I click on it, it opens this dialog box where it asks me the decimal places value, and this is where it is going to round to. So let's just use 2, which means I just want integers. And now when I click OK, this is the result I get. Now look at the result. 2.5 becomes 2, 3.5 becomes 4. Now I would expect 2.5 or anything above 2.5 up to 3 to be rounded up to 3, and anything which is less than 2.5 to be rounded down to 2. But in this case, 2.5 becomes 2, which means it is rounding down. But 3.5 is being rounded up to 4. Now, interesting thing to note in this column is that all of these numbers are even numbers. And this is something which is the default behavior in Power Query. Whenever you're using the round function, it is going to round to the nearest even number if the value is equidistant from two numbers. For example, in this case, 2.5 is equidistant from 2 and 3, so it rounds it to the nearest even number, which is 2. 3.5 is equidistant from 3 and 4, so it rounds it up to the nearest even number, which is 4. Now this is the default behavior in Power Query, and this is something that confuses a lot of people. Now if you do not want Power Query to do this, how to correct it? So let's look at the formula that it created. So when it added this rounded off step, it automatically created this formula where it has used this function called number.round. Now number.round, there are two arguments, but it can also take a third argument. So we are going to give that third argument, and that third argument is the rounding mode. So here, if I use rounding mode, you can see I have the rounding mode away from 0. And this is going to give it the behavior that you would expect, which means that 2.5 is going to round to 3 and 3.5 is going to round to 4. So here, if I add this third argument and now I click here, you can see now it is giving me the behavior that I expect from the round function. So this is something that is not there in Power Query by default, but just know that you can add this rounding mode argument in the number.round function, and it is going to work as expected. When you're working with queries that have a lot of steps and it starts getting complicated, it's a good idea to add some details to the steps so that the next time you are going through your query or someone else is going through it, they would have some context. So let me show you how to do this. Here I have this data set. Let's say I filter this data for these two regions, East and North. Now Power Query adds a step, and the step just says filtered rows, which tells you that some rows have been filtered, but what has happened, why this has happened, that's not there. Now obviously you can change the step name, but there is only so much you can do with the step name. So what you can do is right click on the step name, go to properties, and here in the step properties, this is the name of the step and this is a description. Now you can write description. For example, I can write filtered for region East and North. Also, just don't write what you have done. It's a good idea to also write why you have done this so that there is more context on why things are done, what is the logic behind that step. Now, once you've added the details, click OK, and you'll see that this information icon appears next to the step. And when you hover over it, then it is going to show you the details about that step. So when you have more steps, it's always a good idea to add these descriptions, because then it makes it so much easier for you to understand what is happening in a step some days later when you open that query or when someone else is going through it. So here I have this Excel table. Let's open this in the Power Query editor. So I'm going to right click on any of these cells and then click on Get Data from Table Range. So this is going to open the Power Query editor with the data in it. Now what happens when I do this is it automatically applies two steps. The first one is the source step, where Power Query is connecting to the Excel table and getting the data from there. And the second step is called changed type. Now changed type step is something that Power Query automatically adds, where it's trying to be helpful table. So it tries to identify the data type for each column and then applies that data type to those columns. Now, this is okay and helpful, but sometimes it leads to issues. And in most cases, it's a good idea to not use this step, not have this step. Let me first show you the problem it can cause. So if I go to the source step here, you can see that order ID, I have these numbers, but then there are leading zeros. Same is the case with product code. But if I come here to change type, the leading zeros are gone. And the reason for this is because Power Query identified this to be a column that has numbers. So it changed it to a data type, which is whole number. And same it did with product code. But I wanted those leading zeros, that was important information for this column. So this is something that can happen and you may not even realize it. So what we can do is we can turn this off so that whenever the next time you open Power Query and get data and import data from somewhere, this step would not automatically be added. So to do that, I'm going to go to the File tab here, and in Options and Settings, click on Query Options. When you do that, it is going to open the Query Options dialog box, and here within Global Settings, I would go to Data Load, and by default, this option is selected, which is Detect Column Types and Headers for unstructured sources. Select this option, which is Never Detect Column Types. And now when you click OK, and you open anything again, the change type step would not be there. Let me show you. So let me close this query. Let's discard this. So we have this table again. Let's right click on any of these cells, click on Get Data from Table Range. And now you can see I only have the source step. I do not have the change type step, which means that my order ID product code, these columns are preserved. Now I can decide whether to apply a text data type to it or what to do with it. But at least the change data type is not applied automatically. So here I have this file and I have a query in this file. So I'll go to the Data tab, click on Queries and Connection, and it shows this query. Now, if I hover the cursor over it, you'll see that it says last refreshed Monday. Now I'm recording this video on a Wednesday, which means that this query hasn't refreshed in the past 2 days. And the reason for this is because I have not clicked on this refresh all button, or I've not manually refreshed the query. Now, you may sometime want that whenever you open the Excel file, the queries in it should automatically refresh. Maybe the query is feeding the data into some other table or a chart, and you want them to be refreshed whenever you open the file. So you can enable that setting. I would come here to the query option, right click, then click on Properties, and in the query properties, you have these two options: refresh data when opening the file and refresh every. By default, these are unchecked. So check this option, refresh data when opening the file. And now when I click OK, whenever I open this file again, it is going to refresh the query. This option, refresh every, allows you to refresh the query every specific number of minutes. For example, if I want to refresh this query every 10 minutes, I can put 10 here. And now when I click OK, this query is going to refresh every 10 minutes. And it is also going to refresh when I open this file. Here's a cool trick to keep track of all the errors in your query. So here I have this sales data query, and you can see there are some errors. Now these are the errors that I can see on the screen, but if you're working with large queries with the data running into hundreds of thousands or millions of rows, you would not even know that there are errors in your query. So here is this cool trick. Right click on the query name, then click on reference. So this creates a reference to the original query, and this query, whatever is the output of this query, that would be visible in this reference query. Now let's rename this and call it error tab. You can call it anything you want. Now what I'm going to do is only show the errors in this reference query. So go here and click on this table icon at the top left of the data, and then click on this option called Keep Rows. When I do that, it is going to only keep those rows where there are errors. So you can see I have 5 rows and these rows have errors. So now this becomes like a running tab of errors. When there are no errors, I would know that my query has no errors, or at least I know about the errors. In this case, I want to correct these errors. I can go back to my original query, check whatever is there, correct all the errors, and then when I come back to error tab, I would know that there are errors, or if there are no rows here, then I would know that there are no errors in my query. So this is a nice trick to keep track of all the errors and handle them in the main query. Now let me show you an interesting feature called fuzzy matching. So here I have these two tables and they have a customer name column, and I want to merge these two tables using the customer name column. Now the problem here is that the customer names are not consistent. Sometimes there is a misspelled word, sometimes there is an additional space character, sometimes even the words are different. So how can we do it? We can do it by using the fuzzy matching feature. So let's open these in Power Query. I've already saved these tables as connection. So let me open Power Query by using the keyboard shortcut Alt F12. Now here in Power Query, I have these two tables, customer master and sales data. So let's try and combine them. So I would select customer master, then go to the home tab, and here in merge queries, let me choose merge queries as new. And in the merge dialog box, the customer master is already selected. The other query is sales data. And then I'm going to select the column that I want to use to merge both of these. And at the bottom, you can see it says the selection matches 8 of 20 rows from the first table, which means that although the customer names might be similar, they're not the same. And if they're not the same, Power Query will not be able to combine and merge these tables. In such a case, you can use something called as fuzzy matching. And here we have this option, use fuzzy matching to perform the merge. And when I check this option, now you can see it says the selection matches 17 of 20 rows. Now the way fuzzy matching works is it is going to try and clean the data on its own a little bit in the backend and try and merge them based on it. For example, if there is micro and soft and there is a space in between, then if it will match it with Microsoft if it finds it. Similarly, if there are misspelled words, for example, in Oracle, if there is CLA and CEL in the end, then it will try and match them considering that there is a mismatch in the spelling. So it tries and applies these thresholds on its own and tries to do the matching. But if you want to get more control, you can click on this option here in the fuzzy matching options, and then you get more control on these options. For example, it has a similarity threshold optional, which is optional. It applies on its own, but if you want to specify this value, you can. For example, if I apply a very low value, and the value here could be between 0 and 1. So if I apply a very low value, like let's say 0.2, you'll see that 20 of the 20 rows matches, because in this case, it is going to match anything with anything because the threshold is very low. But if I apply a higher threshold like 0.8, which is reasonable, then it matches only 17 out of 20 rows, and the 3 rows that are not matching are significantly different. It also allows you to choose these options where you want to ignore case or match by combining text parts, something like micro and soft are separate words, and micro, it will match it with Microsoft considering it's the same thing. Now, there is also an interesting option here called transformation table that I'm just going to talk about. But in this case, let's just click OK and see what happens. So it inserted this new query called merge one, and it has merged these tables. You can see I have these tables here. Now, as it said earlier, only 17 of the 20 rows have matched. So there are going to be some tables that are going to be empty. So if I scroll down here, you can see this table is blank. Similarly, this is the table that is blank. So there are some tables that are blank. Now I can come here and I can expand it and you can continue to work with this one. But what if I want to know what are the rows that have not matched? So in that case, what we can do is we can go to add column, and here in custom column, I can use this formula table row count, and then use this sales data column, that the newly added column which has the tables. And now when I click OK, I get these numbers, and wherever there is 0, I would know that there is a mismatch. And if I filter this by 0, I would instantly know that these are the 3 customer names that have actually not matched. Now what you can do is you can create a transformation table, and there you can match them. For example, Greenfield Solutions is something that has not matched. If I go to the sales data table and look for Greenfield Solutions, I can see that there is Greenfield Systems. Now Greenfield Solution and Greenfield Systems are 2 separate names according to Power Query. Although it might be the same company, Power Query thinks that this is not close enough to be matched. What you can do is you can create a transformation table, and in the transformation table, the column name needs to be from and to, and here you can mention what are the things that should be replaced with the other one. For example, in this case, I've used Greenfield Solutions and Greenfield Systems. So Greenfield Solutions is going to be replaced with Greenfield Systems, and it is going to consider them a match. So if I use this transformation table here now, let's go back to the source and use these fuzzy matching options. And in this case, let me use this transformation table. Let's see what happens. Now 18 of 20 rows match because it is using my transformation table, and it was able to realize that Greenfield Systems and Greenfield Solutions are actually the same thing. So it should match them. And now when I click OK, it would give me less number of rows that are now not matching. So if I come here to the filtered row, you can see the Greenfield Solutions is now matching. You can do the same thing with Pacific Trading, Summit Holdings. Go back and use the transformation table to match them. But this is how fuzzy matching works. If you're working with a very large data set, it is not advisable because, as you can see, fuzzy matching works on thresholds and words that are similar, and then it tries and match them. So it is always a good idea to do it with smaller data sets. But if you have no way of using VLOOKUPs or XLOOKUP to combine different tables and you want to merge them, you can use the fuzzy matching feature in Power Query. That's it in this video. I hope you found all the Power Query tricks useful. If you're liking these videos, please subscribe to this YouTube channel and click on the bell icon so that you never miss out on any new Excel tips video I come up with. Thank you and have a nice day.